But this is typical of Reeves, isn't it? She blames everyone. I'm surprised she didn't blame Liz Truss for that, because she blames her for everything else. Liz Truss, Brexit, Thatcher. She usually has a go at Thatcher, and of course the Tories. But this woman will not take responsibility for what she has done. It's a sham. There will be no culprit at the end of this cry, because the true culprit will be her. People do not leak stuff, out into journalists without getting the say-so from the big cheese, and she is the big cheese. The British people are feeling sidelined in favour of the migrants. We saw it in Epping when the needs of those people were ridden roughshod over by a court which said the rights of the migrants trumped the rights of the people in Epping. I don't think we were a racist country before recent years with immigration. I don't think we were, but I think we could become so. If I had a pub, I would humiliate any Labour MP who came in and just say, you're driving me into the ground to get out of my pub.
It's Wednesday and we're back with your shot of the Daily Expresso. I'm Steph Spyro, and today I'm joined by our front page queen, Carole Malone.
Hello.
Carole, I have no abuse to hurl at you from JJ today.
Good.
So I
Makes a change. It's Christmas.
Getting into the festive spirit. But I think that means you're just going to have to tell me how you are. How are you doing?
Well, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I've had a bit of a bad morning because I have asthma, and I had a bit of an attack earlier, and I was doing television, which was a bit of a problem. But hopefully it won't be happening here. I've got all my lozenges, all my bits and bobs here, so I should be fine.
Good. As long as you're feeling okay.
I'm panicking about Christmas. Are you not, Steph? I'm panicking now.
I haven't started my Christmas shopping at all.
Neither have I.
I should be panicked, but I'm not.
And about 3 weeks ago, I thought, there's loads of time. Now I'm thinking, God, there's no time at all.
It's around the corner.
Yeah.
Goodness. Well, another person who can't wait for Christmas, I'm sure, is Rachel Reeves.
Ooh.
She got into a big shouting match this morning. The Chancellor didn't react kindly when she was told her budget was killing growth by Tory MP Dame Harriet Baldwin. Here's the clip.
Pro-growth of all is the 5 interest rate cuts that we've had from the Bank of England since the general election. That's only possible because of the stability that we've provided after the chaos we had in previous years.
So you chose not to put any new growth measures in this budget.
Well, that's exactly. No, that's not what I said. Dame Harriet. Sorry, Dame Harriet.
Perhaps Dame Harriet, if you ask a question, then the Chancellor can.
Yes, but don't contradict what I've just said. Yes, we have regular meetings of the Growth Mission Board, but I did not say in the answer to my question, as you suggested, that there were no growth measures in this budget. Far from it.
Stroppy.
It seems so someone is ready for a break.
She's rattled.
She's
absolutely rattled.
She is.
She's used to, in a lot of interviews that she does, just getting her own way and spewing whatever nonsense she wants to say. Someone's trying to pin her down, and she doesn't like being pinned down because mostly what she says is rubbish, and she doesn't like being pinned down on the rubbish.
No, she looks like she's getting a bit of a grilling. So why at this point should people believe what she says?
You can't believe what she says, and in that grilling she had today with the Select Committee, she did admit that the budget leaks were unacceptable and damaging, but she's actually trying to pretend she knew nothing about them. I mean, this is a joke. We have had more leaks on this budget than I have ever known in my journalistic career, and for her to say she didn't know anything about them is a joke. She is not telling the truth on this. And she's now saying she's launching an inquiry. It's a sham. There will be no culprit at the end of this cry, because the true culprit will be her. People do not leak stuff, out into journalists without getting the say-so from the big cheese, and she is the big cheese. She was actually trying to say that that it was in November, I think, and she said that it was the government had to brief. The government had to brief journalists to tell them that income tax wasn't going to be part of the budget, and they had to do that because it was causing chaos in the markets. And she is actually saying, I didn't give the okay for that. Well, come on, it's nonsense. Of course she gave the okay. But this is typical of Reeves, isn't it? She blames everyone. I'm surprised she didn't blame Liz Truss for that, because she blames her for everything else. Liz Truss, Brexit, Thatcher. She usually has a go at Thatcher, and of course the Tories. But this woman will not take responsibility for what she has done. And she talks about growth. We have no growth, and we saw that, it's piddling, minuscule amounts, point was something of a percent. Anyway, and no, we don't believe what she says. talking about leaks, she talked up the black hole big time. She talked it up, even though on November, I think it was the 2nd or the 4th or something. The 4th. She knew absolutely that the country was in a better state than she had told us it was, and yet still she knew there was a 4.2 billion surplus, and yet still she chose to talk down the situation we were in. Also, she could impose these 30 billion quid's worth of tax rises. So I just, I think she is entirely discredited now. I'm sorry that Starmer backed her after the budget. I'm really sorry he did that. And I know why he did. We all know why he did it, to save his own backside. But you know what? She stands up now and no one's listening. No one believes her. And for a chancellor, that's catastrophic. And this woman has caused chaos in the markets, and she won't admit to it. She's forever criticising Truss for doing exactly that. What she's doing is, not a kick in the backside off that. So it actually, I listen to her and my head just goes blank now. No.
And the thing is, to go back to your earlier point about the leaks, I mean, it was such a late budget.
Yes.
The leaks were streaming out of the Treasury for weeks.
Yeah.
She could have clamped down on it way sooner.
She could have clamped
if she wanted to.
They were using the leaks as a way to gauge public opinion on what she was actually going to finally.
Which often happens, but not in the way we've seen it.
Not in that way. But I really do think the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, should start an investigation, because this one that she's launched is going to achieve nothing. So we need to get a proper body who is away from government to actually look into what happened here, because she has lied to this country. There is no question about that. And I think it's shameful that there's not going to be any kind of ethics inquiry into what she did. All this does is confirm in the public's mind that we are being ruled over by a bunch of clowns and a bunch of very disingenuous people who lie to us. And she is the epitome of that.
Well, I think many would agree. And moving on from Rachel Reeves, Carole, you have written the Daily Expresso's front page today, which we will get to in a quick minute. But just before that, President Donald Trump has launched a blistering attack on Europe, calling its leaders weak and its nations decaying. Trump's condemnation comes just a day after Keir Starmer welcomed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, France's President Emmanuel Macron, and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz at number 10 for discussion on Trump's 28-point peace plan. Do you agree with Trump that Europe is decaying?
Oh my God, yes. I don't know how anybody cannot agree with him. Yeah, he is totally right. Europe has been struggling now with immigration for years, but the difference between Europe and us is that Europe is trying very hard now to stem it. Germany is trying very hard and is succeeding, as is Italy, particularly Italy, actually. And there are some countries like Poland and Hungary who don't let anybody in. They've just decided that's not going to happen. But in this country, there seems to be no real will to crack down on it. We have. There's a damning new report out today by the National Audit Office saying that we have lost count of how many asylum seekers have gone missing and have just assimilated into the community. And that is actually quite frightening, because we don't have any data. We don't know what's happening. But it is Trump is right, and he's right when he talks about that we're woke and we're weak. We are. We're terrified about offending the sensibilities of people who come here illegally, and yet we don't seem to give a stuff about the sensibilities of the British people, who are feeling overwhelmed by what's happening here. We're importing hordes of military-age young men between 18 and 30. We don't know who they are because they've ditched their papers. We don't know where they're from. We don't know what kind of risk they pose to us. But so they are a security risk, and we're plonking these young men into in many cases very quiet communities where they are causing havoc, and we know they're causing havoc. And the terrible thing is that this government tries to hide what illegal asylum seekers are doing. They don't tell us the nationality of the people who are committing the crimes. They try to hide it. Thank God we have a free press and who are making clear who the people are. But asylum cost this country £5 billion last year, and that's not including the legal fees, the court fees, the fees for the lawyers. That's not counting the benefits they get. £5 billion on looking after these people, putting them in asylum hotels. And what we're seeing now is that they are committing crimes. They are from different cultures. They are from cultures that do not marry with our own. and it is causing havoc. And people are angry. It's a combination of them being angry and them being scared. So Trump is dead right. I mean, he's dead right about Sadiq Khan as well, when he talks about what Sadiq Khan's done to London. London has changed beyond all recognition now, I think. But I think the fabric of the country is changing too, and not in a good way. And people are rightly scared of that.
Do you think Europe and the UK need to keep Trump and the US on side? Obviously, all these talks this week have been happening because of the war in Ukraine.
Yes.
It seems like Trump is looking to improve his relationship with Russia, and Trump wants Europe to step up when it comes to a peace plan in Ukraine. Talk me through maybe the sensitivities around that relationship with Europe and the Prime Minister.
I think he wants to cut Europe loose. That's what I think. I think, and I think he wants to cut us loose. I don't think it's a case of, I'm going to cozy up to Putin and cut. I think it's because he sees Europe as being weak. And I think he sees this country particularly as being weak. Yeah. When you're trying to shore up, yes, we should be involved with Ukraine. And we talk, especially in this country, Starmer talks a lot about Ukraine, but what is he actually doing? Trump is the one who is actually trying to make peace between the two countries. He's meeting with the two countries. Yes, and Starmer does the odd press conference and gives Zelensky a hug, but he's not actually doing anything.
And I think he knows that. I think there's a worry that Europe is being sidelined, or just not as a key player as Europe thinks they are.
Well, they're not. I don't think they're a player at all, and they're not a player because they've chosen just to let America do all the work in the past and take all the hits and spend all the money. And I think that Trump is saying, no, I'm not having that. You either take part. When he's talking about NATO, it's the same thing. He's saying, pay your way or get out of it. Yeah. Don't expect me to look after you. And he's spot on. And if we lose that relationship with the US, I don't know how special it is anymore, but if we lose that, we're in big trouble because we have no defences. We can't look after ourselves anymore. We're constantly hearing people from the military, from the Navy saying we could not defend ourselves if we were attacked. And people are always saying, it will never be a hand-to-hand war anymore. We're seeing it in Ukraine. Yeah. A few hundred miles away, we're seeing hand-to-hand war. So yes, they're still happening. But, I think Trump is, a lot of people, They won't listen to what he says. They won't try and understand what he's saying because they just hate him and they think he's an idiot. He's really not an idiot, and I think he's dead right on here. We should have been stronger. Our borders are leaking. We can't stop anyone coming in. But more importantly, what's happening in this country, re-immigration, the British people are feeling sidelined in favour of the migrants. We saw it in Epping when the needs of those people were ridden roughshod over by a court which said the rights of the migrants trumped the rights of the people in Epping. And that is a terrible thing in your own country. People are paying taxes here, they earn money here, and yet people who are coming illegally and are doing nothing for this country are actually, they've been looked after in a way British people aren't. So yes, there is anger, and I fear what's going to happen, because I don't think we were a racist country before, recent years with immigration. I don't think we were, but I think we could become so. And that would be the fault of politicians, not just Labour, Tory as well, not securing our borders, not taking care. This country had a worldwide reputation for looking after the world's needy, people who really needed it. Now we have a reputation for being fools and being suckered by people coming here illegally.
And what do you think the consequences would be of being a racist country? How would that show itself differently?
I think what that would do, it would harden you to people who had real needs to be here, people who had come from countries, people who were persecuted. Because in the end, Poland just says now, we're taking nobody, don't care what your circumstances are. Now, are they a racist country? The president would say, is the president or prime minister? Anyway, he would say, no, we're not. He would say, we're doing exactly what the people of this country want. And as he said, he was on television the other night being interviewed by someone from the BBC who couldn't hide her horror at what he was saying, bless. She was totally shocked. He was just saying, we don't care. We won't take people of Islamic faith in this country. We haven't had a terrorist attack. We don't care what you think. We care what our people think. And, we need a bit of that in this country right now, because I fear if we don't, you hear people turning against all immigrants now, and that's not what we should be doing.
And now on to the horrific story of 2 Afghan small boat migrants who have been convicted of raping a 15-year-old girl in Leamington Spa. The teens Jan Jahanzeb and Isra Nazil had arrived in the UK on small boats in May. Their victim managed to record the start and the aftermath of an horrific attack on her phone. Both perpetrators were arrested and pleaded guilty to 1 count of raping a child under the age of 16. Carole, you've written about this in the front of the Daily Express, and it's online as well. And as you say several times, these people had been welcomed into the country and were living in taxpayer accommodation at the taxpayer's expense, and this is how they treated.
It is, it is beyond. I still can't get over this young girl. 15 years old. She was a virgin. This was her first sexual experience. How can she ever look at sex again and not think of it as a violent, brutal, hellish act? This girl suffers from the kind of anxiety that makes her physically sick every day of her life. Now, and I could cry for her, and I can cry for her parents too, because they feel enormous guilt that they weren't able to protect their child. But how can they? This young girl was dragged away from her friends in full public view, taken to a spot. And by the way, British people ignored her as well. They walked past while this was happening, which shocks me. One of them a woman. I mean, it shocks me to my core. And her life is forever wrecked by it. No matter how many, I've interviewed so many rape victims, and they tell me there's not a day goes by when they don't think about it. Yes, it gets easier over time, but it haunts them, and it can ruin relationships forever for them. And I just think we are now allowing this to happen. The lawyers in this case, I found this astonishing as well, where the lawyers didn't want them named because they said it could cause public disorder, which tells me they haven't a clue what this is really about. This is about the wrecking of a life of a 15-year-old girl. It's not about public disorder. It's not about anything that might happen out there. It's about her, and it's about her life. And these lawyers don't get that, and they're forever. And this lawyer's, Nizal's lawyer, actually said, he said, maybe when he's served his sentence, he will make a life here. I mean, seriously, we don't want him here. We want him out. He's a rapist. And whatever will happen to him in prison will probably make him worse than what he is now. So we don't want him, get them out.
But there's a chance that at least one of them, I think your piece is true, but at least one might not even be deported.
Well, they're saying that you can say the name, I can't. Jahanzeb, they're saying he would be deported once he's served his sentence. Now, he's been sentenced to 10 years. He'll serve 4. In this current climate, and they're saying he'll be deported. No, he won't, because some slimy human rights lawyer is going to come up and say, if he goes back to Afghanistan, he will be hurt. You know what? I don't care. If he gets hurt, he's brought it on himself, and why should he be our problem? He's raped a young 15-year-old rector. I don't care about him. I really don't. But I will bet, I'd stake everything that he will not be deported when he's freed from prison. And I just think, we have to start talking about who is, perpetrating these rapes. When you see some news bulletins, they'll do everything to hide the fact that the person who's committed this is a Somalian or in Afghanistan or from Sudan. They'll bust a gut, especially the BBC, to hide this. We've got to stop that. We've got to acknowledge who's doing it. And, all the liberals and the bleeding hearts, they're happy to make excuses for why this is happening. There is no excuse. There really isn't. And I just think until we acknowledge that these people come from the kind of culture where women are meat. They're there to be used and abused at will by misogynistic men. Until we acknowledge that, we're never going to solve the problem. And, these bleeding hearts will say, women get raped in this country by, Indigenous people. Yes, they do. But let's not import more. Let's not import people who don't understand why this is so wrong.
I think even this week there was another case up in Bolton of a 28-year-old man, also an Afghan national, that raped, I think, two teenagers as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I want to just read the very last paragraph of your piece. It says, decades ago, we stood by and did nothing while white girls were systemically raped and abused by Pakistani rape gangs. So are we going to stand by and do nothing while asylum seekers from alien cultures keep raping and abusing women here because where they come from, it's normal? And I think I was quite struck by the comparison with the grooming gangs.
It is exactly that. I'm saying all those years ago, it's still happening now in some places, but in those years ago, we were frightened to say that the people committing these crimes were Pakistani Muslims, or the majority of them were Pakistani Muslims. And here we are still afraid to say why. Who are we afraid of upsetting? People who come here illegally, people who are taking money from British taxpayers, and they reward our kindness, our compassion in taking them in by raping young girls. I just find it. I find it beyond belief, and there are still people today. There was a lawyer this week. He tried to say that because it was a sexual offence, he was trying to say that this person was from a different culture. Yes, precisely. That's the point. That they think it's okay, so that's why they shouldn't be here, because we're never going to teach them any different.
I've always believed if there's a will, there's a way. When it comes down to tackling illegal migration, the small boats crisis, do you think there's the will by those in government?
God, there's no will in this country. Look at Trump. He was in office for a matter of weeks, and I think illegal immigration over the border has been cut by something like 96%. So, and he knew exactly what to do. He policed the borders. He literally stopped them coming in, threw some out. That's how you do it. But in this country, we will never, well, especially under this government, that's never going to happen. I think under a reform government, it could happen. But, there are still some people who think, and Keir Starmer is one of those people who think that there's nothing wrong with immigration. There's nothing wrong with illegal immigration at all. I mean, he spent his life actually defending these people. So, when your mindset tells you it's a perfectly good thing, whether it's legal or illegal, how are you ever going to solve the problem? You're not. And I think only a total change of mindset, of government, of attitude is actually going to do that. And Farage's thing is immigration. And that's why I think he will be our next Prime Minister, precisely because of this, because this is going to get worse. This young girl isn't the first, and she won't be the last.
And people absolutely care about women and girls' safety on Preston streets.
It is the government's duty to take care of all of its people. It's especially its duty to take care of women and children. And this girl is a child in the eyes of the law. She is a child. And I'm astonished. And what the terrifying thing for me was that not only was she raped by these two boys, but that British people walked by and let it happen. And it's what I was just saying before about how people can become racist, how they can become inured, they don't care. It's happening. And I don't want to see that in this country. It's
awful. As they kind of marched her off to what was described as a den, I think she said, "You're going to rape me." So
God knows how she did it. God knows how she managed to film parts of it, and that's why. And thank God for the judge in this case. It was a woman judge, and thank God she lifted restrictions, because there are so many judges who will not lift restrictions and name these people. Precisely because of what I'm doing, because they think they should be protected, not the victims, but the actual perpetrators of crime. But thank God she did what she did, and I hope other judges take note.
We would just like to add that anyone impacted by anything we've discussed can contact the Rape Crisis Helpline on 0808 500 2222 for free, with a support line available 24/7. The NHS has issued an advisory urging people to wear masks. A super flu virus, reportedly the K strain, has the country's hospitals in a chokehold. There are reports of schools bringing back COVID-style lockdowns, and NHS urging those eligible for a flu vaccine to take their shots. Carole, I've been seeing a lot more people wearing masks. Is that something you've seen, and what are your thoughts?
It's not going to be me, I can tell you that. Masks don't work. We know they don't work. We know from COVID they don't work. We've heard from many World Health Organisations they don't work. Organisations here in 2020, one of them being the Respiratory Threats and Advisory Group, said they don't work. SAGE, our very own group here, said they don't work. So I don't quite know why this is now people are being advised to do this. The government used the power of the state during COVID to enforce mandatory mask wearing, despite the fact they knew they didn't work. But they wanted to make it look like they were doing something. So I don't know how they imagine it's going to work now. They're not, and especially the kind of masks that we have access to. There are some masks that will keep everything out. We don't have access to that. You don't buy those down in Boots. They just don't work. And I don't know whether you've ever seen the way people wear masks in this country. They have, especially during COVID, they had one clocked around their ear hanging off. They've pulled it out of their bag, put it half on, pull it off to talk. I mean, it's just silly. And I just think this is a flu epidemic. we have one every year. I've been around long enough to know that every single year the NHS tells me that this is the worst one ever, and that
I think that is what they've said this year. A record number of cases for England for this time of the year.
But it's not record number because it isn't as yet, because in 2022 we had the worst ever. It was I can't remember, it was 20,000 people died. And I think 2 years ago it was 15,000 people died. The predictions for this year are about 8,000. So but any person who dies, it's a tragedy, don't get me wrong. However, the majority of people who die are people who have existing conditions where the flu had affected. It's the elderly. Okay, if I was going to visit an elderly person, I probably would wear a mask. Just on the off chance. I know it doesn't work, but one, it would make that person feel better. And two, I would do it anyway. I would never want to make anybody sick. But, we have schools being closed now, Steph. It's just a joke. The unions are saying that it's just like dangerous. No, we've got to build up immunity among children. Children don't die from flu. They don't even get that sick from flu.
And we saw the huge mental health toll that excluding kids from school and the impact that had on their education during COVID as well.
We've spent years banging on about what COVID did to kids' education, taking them out of school. We spent years back, and yet here we are with teachers and the unions. I think it's been driven by the unions. I think they want a few shopping days off before Christmas. It can be the only reason, because it's not to protect the kids, because the kids don't get it that badly. And I just think, we've become this country now, this Weasley country, that behaves, like a flu is like this is not the pandemic, and yet the instructions from the government and from health authorities are exactly the same instructions as they gave us during COVID about what we should do, how to behave.
I guess, do you think then we've learnt nothing from the pandemic?
Do you know what? I mean, the COVID inquiry, what the COVID inquiry showed me was a total waste of money, because it didn't tell us what we should do if there's another pandemic. All it did was blame the people who were in power in the last pandemic. So we're no farther forward on that. And I think flu's flu. Some people are really sick with it. You've got to take a week off work. Some people aren't that sick with it. To me, get your flu jab. If you know you've got it, stay out of people's way for a couple of days. But I'm not walking around in a mask. I'm just not walking around like we did during COVID, because I don't trust the government. The government, I'm entirely sure, doesn't know what it's doing on this, but it's just doing it anyway because it looks like there's a public health emergency. So let's do and say something that looks like we're dealing with it, but they're not. And the way they could deal with a public health emergency of a flu, get more hospital beds, get more staff, make the NHS better, make it so that people don't have to be treated in corridors for 3 and 4 days at a time. Do that, but don't start imposing these ridiculous Stasi-type rules on the British public again.
A restaurant in Dorset has banned their local MP from entering in protest over the government's autumn budget. James Fowler, the owner of the Larder House, has banned Tom Hayes and all other Labour MPs in retaliation over tax rises on the hospitality industry. You're giggling. I take it you're not surprised by that.
Well, but it's not just James. There are so far 50 landlords of 50 pubs have banned Labour MPs all over the country. And I'm pretty sure that number will grow. And I really hope it does, because, these people are on the verge of being put out of business by Rachel Reeves. She hit them last year with NI, and she's hit them again this year. And pubs are really important in communities, and she is hammering them and hammering them. And I hope all MPs, all Labour MPs, not Tories and certainly not Reform, I hope they all get banned from pubs, because your policies have consequences. They have real life consequences. And I think they need to know what they are, and they need to be made to listen to people. So if I had a pub, I would humiliate any Labour MP who came in and just say, you're driving me into the ground to get out of my pub. What was it that woman on EastEnders said years ago? Peggy, she said, get out of my pub. That's what I would do.
And it's amazing, because I mean, we've had some bad budgets, there's been bad spells, but I've never heard of MPs being banned from establishments. But that shows you the sense of anger among business owners in the hospitality sector.
Reeves, if she understands the economy like she says she does, I mean, I don't believe she does, but if she did, she would know what she's doing to these people, especially in the hospitality trade. They came out of COVID, they were just recovering, and then she hits them with all this. Does she not get that these are the people who are going to keep the economy going? They're going to make people spend money. But I forgot the figure. There's a number of there's a figure for how many pubs are closing every week in this country, and it's terrifying. And it's terrifying on all sorts of levels. One, every time a pub closes, some poor family is going bust. But apart from that, it destroys communities. Pubs are great places for people to mix and socialise and talk and chat about the government and all sorts of. And that's when once they're closed, they're never going to reopen again.
And it's a shame because I think there'll be a lot of pubs that will have their last Christmas probably this year and won't live to see next year.
I think so. And does she care? No. She's too busy trying to save her own backside from being fired. And I just think, you've got to start listening to people. And the thing is, though, when the election comes, this government, Labour will be out of power for decades. They'll never get back because I don't think the public will ever trust them ever again. I hear people every day, lifelong Labour voters, saying never again. It's never going to happen. Because in the past, I grew up in a very working class mining village. If you didn't vote Labour there, you would be killed in a field somewhere. Seriously, it was inbred into them. I go back home now, those people are never voting Labour again. And when you've lost them, you just don't get them back.
And it's amazing because straight after the election, people were talking about this huge majority and how Labour were nice and comfortable for like 10 years or something.
Never happen again.
No.
They will be out. They'll be out so bad. That's why he's cancelling mayoral elections. That's why he's cancelling council elections because he knows he's going to lose.
It'll be interesting to see whether this ban does extend to other sectors, other types of businesses, and they all just decide to stop barring MPs.
I hope so.
I
hope restaurants bar them. I hope if I owned anything, I'd bar them.
Let's see if Labour MPs end up eating out at all in 2026. Right, everyone, the caffeine has worn off, and that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much to Carole, as always, for joining us, and thank you to you for watching at home. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Expresso, when I'll be joined by TV presenter Mark Dolan. Thank you, and bye for now.